Hi, this is Sally Ganga, and we are back talking with Katie, Tyler, and Teresa. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So I'm just curious about, I mean, it sounds like both of you actually did visit the college. I'm curious if there was anything like, was there anything about that visit that made you like really say, like, what stood out to you in particular that made you say you want to go to this school? And then beyond that, I'm kind of curious what made you decide you might want to work for the admission office. So, Teresa, why don't you go ahead and start?
Definitely. What really sold me on Boston College was talking to a student named Franny Hess. He was on my information session when I came to visit. And coming in, I knew that I wanted to work with children in college. I didn't know specifically teaching and education, but I knew I wanted to maybe go into therapy or counseling or social work. And so as I was visiting a lot of schools, I was on the lookout for maybe programs or majors or even clubs where students were working with children. And unfortunately, at a lot of the visits and places I was going, I wasn't finding that. And I was getting very discouraged. And I was feeling like, oh, maybe I'm choosing the wrong path. Maybe I should do more medical side of things. And finally, Franny Hess was the first person on a college visit to say, hi, my name is Franny Hess. I'm studying elementary ed applied psychology with a minor in Spanish. And I was like, wow, he's actually doing something that I could see myself doing in college. And I talked to him after the information session, and he told me about some classes that he had been taking at Boston College and why he was taking and studying elementary ed, applied psychology at Boston College. And it, like I said, was the first time where I could see myself actually doing something that one of my tour guides was telling me about and their experience. And so through that conversation with Franny, I really was like, Boston College has a great program for me. And so I think that's an important part of the decision making process too, finding a place where you fit in, where your interests are wanted and needed on the campus, and you feel a part of the community even before you submit your application.
Where you're not an afterthought.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's really important. You know, one of the things that I recommend students do is they can even look up and see like what percentage of certain majors are there on a particular campus. And that can really give you a sense of, is the college putting resources into this? You know, is this something that's going to be valued on the campus? All right, what about you, Tyler?
Yeah, so funny enough, I actually didn't do the traditional college tour here. I went on a lot of college tours in general, but at BC, we have a program called the Eagle for a Day, which is you kind of follow a kid around for 3, 4 hours. You go to one of their classes, you guys go to the dining hall, and then you just really just walk around. So I had spent the day before like writing down 20 questions so I could ask this kid and get a real I was really drilling this kid when I went there. But it was really my experience with him that sealed the deal. I went to it was like a calculus class, which wasn't the most interesting class because it was calculus. But it was a fantastic experience because I really, I think through him got a sense of what the student body was going to be like. I'll, share a quick story. When I left, I emailed him, thank you for giving me the store. And he said, oh, thanks so much for visiting. Really nice connecting. Then he mentioned he was like, if you ever need like help with like an essay or if you ever want me to like read over your essay for like your English class or something, just email it to me and I can edit it for you. I was like, oh my gosh, this kid just like offered to edit my high school essays for some reason. But I thought that was
Hmm.
like so kind of exemplar of the type of person that comes to BC. I think it's a really kind of it's a high achieving place, but with a really supported student body, which is one of the top things that I was looking for in a college. So that really sealed the deal for me. And then in terms of why I wanted to be part of the student admissions program here, I think that going to college, being in college is just one of the most important times of your life, right? This is when you can really start to engage in the exact subject matters that really interest you, where you can find things you're passionate about, career paths you might be passionate about, or extracurricular activities that you might be passionate about. I always tell people on tours, like get involved, right when you get to college, join as many things as possible. You might end up dropping some of them, but you might find some things that stay with you for life. And so I think that, the idea that I could have an impact on other people finding that place and having those experiences is just something that, was really important to me and that I've really enjoyed doing.
Okay, great. So, Kayte, anything you want to add about sort of why students come to work for you in representing Boston College? Anything that stands out? And I'll just put in the note that I and many of my colleagues started as college tour guides. So watch out, you guys. You may take a detour.
That's
I thought I
right.
wanted to be a I thought I wanted to be a professor. That was my initial goal. And then I realized I'm way too social to spend all that time doing research. And so admissions was just like a better, and I wouldn't have found out except an admission counselor actually came up to me and said, I think you'd be a great tour guide. Have you thought about applying? I hadn't even thought about it. I applied, I became an intern the next year, and there it was. So just curious about your pathways that you've seen, Kayte.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think so I mentioned I oversee our student admission program, nearly 1,000 students out of our 9,300 undergraduate students. So that kind of speaks volumes about the desire to be a part of this program. And I think we take a little bit of a unique approach to our college visit in that we really put our student volunteers at the center of the visit. So even our information session is for student panelists who tell their stories, and then we open it up for Q&A to the audience, sometimes 250 people. We have no idea what questions they're going to ask us. It's authentic, unscripted every single time. We put a lot of trust in our students to really represent the authentic student voice. There's no script. And I think that's why our students like volunteering, right? Because it's their opportunity to really just tell their truest story. And our philosophy is we don't want to sell BC. We want to tell you the good, sometimes the frustrating, but we want to tell you the realest version of Boston College so you can take the information and you can go home and decide if it's the right place for you. And for some students it is and some it isn't. And that's why there are such a diverse range of colleges and universities in the US, right? But I think our student volunteers really identify with that mission and that philosophy of being the truest version of themselves, of representing a diverse group of students here on campus, and really therefore representing an authentic Boston College, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions I always recommend that students ask is there anybody who you think wouldn't be happy here? Right? Like, is there someone, and a lot of colleges, really, most people would be happy, but usually students have an experience with someone for whom it wasn't the right place. Like, I visited an very urban campus in a city that wasn't like 100% wealthy. And he said, I love it here. I love all the opportunities this gives me, but not every student's comfortable. If you want a suburban environment, this isn't for you. So usually there's something like that. So I wonder, I kind of wonder, like, or one of the things I like about it is that you can tell that authentic story. And that sort of brings me to my next question, actually, which is is there anything you would have done differently in your search? I mean, knowing that obviously you both love Boston College, it's just a great place for you to be, but is there something you wish you had known, questions that you wished you had asked because it might have helped you adjust a little faster? Teresa, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think coming into the decision-making process and looking at a lot of great universities, I really stuck to the East Coast, and I'm in Massachusetts in the New England area. But both my parents went to Villanova, and for a long time during my decision-making process, that was like at the forefront of it, and everything else was where around where I'm from can I go to college? And Boston College was actually one of the farthest colleges from home that I applied to. And looking back, I wish I had at least looked on websites of universities that were in other areas of the country and were a little outside of my comfort zone, but were still interesting, had programs that I was interested in, and kind of had just gone more broad at the beginning, because I think when you start the process with a narrow view of I only want to be on the East Coast, I only want to be in the Northeast, then that inherently narrows your pool of places that you look into and apply and learn about. So I do wish that I had a bit more broad, a little bit more of a wider lens, and then from there narrow down, okay, I know I only want to go to a school in the Northeast.
Yeah, I actually have started telling students to test their hypothesis. They have a hypothesis that they want a mid-range urban school not too far from home. That's a pretty common hypothesis, but test it. Look at these ones that are farther away. Look at the schools that are bigger or smaller. So yeah, I think that's a great advice for students to have. Like, just make sure. Tyler, what about you?
Yeah, for starters, I would have laughed at every single one of my college, like the tour guide's jokes. It's huge. Takes a lot to get up there and make a joke. Um, but on a more serious note, I think that sometimes, I would go to a city, really pack the schedule with college tours, maybe hit, 3 schools in one day. And so sometimes, especially if it was that middle school, I'd drive in, go to the tour, and then leave right after. And I think that kind of giving yourself a buffer, either on the front end or the back end, could be a really good idea to be able to, just walk around the campus even without a tour guide. I know for us, like most of our buildings are open. If you're interested in business, I can point out Devlin Hall where the business or the school management is. You can walk around there for a little while, or just walking around the surrounding area of the campus. I think can be really valuable. And so I think giving yourself a little bit of a buffer on either side is really important. I can also talk about something that I thought I did well. This was also a little bit of what my mom did well because she went on a lot of my tours with me. But is talking to the tour guides kind of one on one. When you're walking in between stops or right after stops. Or I remember I visited one school that had 2 tour guides. I think one was kind of in training, and so I talked to the one that was in training a little while. I think those one-on-one conversations can sometimes allow the tour guides to maybe be a little bit more genuine in what they're saying. I think that as a tour guide, it's tough to escape. It's sometimes tough to escape that kind of, um, selling mentality, salesperson mentality a little bit. But I think if you're talking to someone one on one, that's really when a student can be their most genuine. And that's when I had just some really great conversations with students that allowed me to make really confident choices.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would even say, maybe go to the dining hall, right? You might
Mhm.
find students willing to talk to you there, that kind of thing. Katie, do you have anything to add to all of this?
I would just empower everyone to feel confident that their questions are valid also, right? There's no question that if it's personal to you isn't important to ask or isn't acceptable to ask. So whether it be a really specific question about an academic program or asking what the political culture is like on campus, anything that's kind of important to you on your mind, I always try to encourage students and their families to feel confident asking them. And also, that's how the rumor mill starts if you don't, right? I heard that. And we're always happy to just address things kind of face on and really give students the best information, at least to our ability. So feel confident that we're here to help.
Yeah, the rumors that I have heard sometimes are ridiculous,
Yeah.
including in this current position. Students will come back and say, well, they don't have any biology majors there. And I'm like, I'm quite confident that they have biology majors there. I'm really, really confident that that is completely incorrect information. So, all right, so let's kind of wrap up with this. We just have a few minutes left, but I'd love it, Katie, if you could tell me whether whether the visit impacts an admissions decision.
It's a great question. And I'll say specifically at Boston College, it does not. So a term that you hear kind of used often in the admission profession is demonstration of interest, which means that colleges and universities might be tracking your engagement with that university, whether it be a college visit, an email, engaging at a high school visit or a college fair, and that those engagements or those encounters might be factored into the admissions process. At BC, we've made a very conscious decision to not do that, to really honor the student's application and all of the components that are submitted in terms of how we make and evaluate a student and how we make a decision. But some universities do track interest, and typically they're very transparent about that if that's the case. And I think that's a question you should feel empowered to ask as well, because bottom line, if they do use that to impact the admission decision, that might be a really important reason to visit a campus or to engage virtually in some way if the campus isn't accessible to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they are quite transparent. I visited Elon a few years ago and they were like, visit, but also send your admission counselor an email. I mean, they were really direct about that. Whereas at Chicago, that kind of thing didn't matter. And unfortunately, I really didn't even have time to respond to those emails. I mean, I felt bad about it, but I didn't have time. So,
Right.
so I think it's really good. Yes, trust the college, see what they say. Generally speaking, they really are just going to tell you what they think. Um, right, and so I think we have just like 1 minute left. So just quickly, after that initial visit, is there anything that Boston College would want you to follow up somehow? I mean, I figure thank you notes are always a good thing.
So in a formal way, no, we don't have any expectation that a student will or needs to follow up with us. That being said, we always welcome students reaching out. We give out our personal contact information. It's available on the website. And I think more importantly, we offer really, Tyler mentioned one of them, really specific programs for students to visit once they're further along in the process. So in terms of engaging after that initial visit in a way that's helpful for you, we certainly encourage it. Doing shadow programs with students, attending admitted student days, all of these will just further help you in your discernment process and figuring out if BC in this case is the right place to call home.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right. Thank you so much, Kayte, Teresa, and Tyler. This was great. I really appreciate it. All right. So I want to tell everybody about our show next week. I'll be the host again, and I'll be talking with colleagues about advice for international students who want to study in the US and American students who want to study in other countries. So tune in for that. Please do remember to rate us on iTunes, and you can find us every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Everybody have a great week.